The movie begins as Sarah Bailey, a troubled young girl with unusual abilities, moves to a new home in Los Angeles with her father and stepmother. After a brief look around the house, she begins to unpack her things. Suddenly, a rough-looking man in tattered clothes gently opens the door, but does not walk in. He has a giant snake in his hands and calmly asks if Sarah wants to keep it. Spooked by the man's sudden appearance, she loses her cool and shouts for her dad. In a few seconds, her dad comes down and chases the man away with a crowbar. The following day, Sarah joins her new school, the St. Benedict's Catholic School. In the meantime, 3 young girls, Nancy, Bonnie, and Rochelle, walk through the school halls. The trio are outcasts as they are rumored to be witches. While taking their stuff from the locker, Bonnie reads an almanac and reveals that the astronomical data indicates the arrival of a new person in the school. They wonder if the new student will be the long-awaited 4th member who will complete their group. Later, in French class, Sarah fluently answers a question in French which catches the attention of a popular boy, Chris Hooker. As the class continues, she begins to magically spin a pencil on her desk, unaware of her surroundings. Bonnie intently watches all of this unfolding and gasps in excitement. After a while, Sarah eventually notices the girl watching her. This causes the pencil to fall down, and she pretends like nothing really happened. At lunch break, Chris approaches Sarah and introduces himself. He immediately starts flirting with her, but also warns her about Nancy, Bonnie, and Rochelle. He adds that everyone in the school knows that the 3 girls are witches. But before Sarah can question him further, he invites her to watch him at football practice later that day. After school ends, Sarah walks towards the football ground to watch Chris practice. Soon, the 3 girls approach her and introduce themselves. After a brief conversation, Nancy invites her to hang out with them. She also warns Sarah that Chris is not a nice guy. From their conversation, it is obvious that Nancy and Chris dated sometime in the past. Although Sarah is not fully convinced by Nancy's warning, she does join them for shopping. Following this, the 4 girls enter a magic shop that sells various books on witchcraft, potions, and several other quirky items. There, Sarah tries to look in the back room that is hidden behind a dark curtain. But the shop's owner, Lirio, immediately stops her. The two then have a brief conversation, and Lirio suggests her a few books on witchcraft. However, Sarah replies that she doesn't know much about the subject and has never tried it. The mysterious shop owner replies that she may be a natural witch who just needs a bit of a nudge. On their way back home, the girls run into the vagrant man who had appeared earlier at Sarah's house. He still has a snake in his hand and tries to strike up a conversation with her. However, she panics once more and quickly flees across the road. When the man follows, he's run over by a car that knocks him dead on the road. Shocked and scared, the girls run into the woods nearby, where Bonnie says that the 4 of them caused the accident to happen by thinking about it at the same time. Surprisingly, Sarah doesn't retaliate to this suggestion, as she was indeed hoping that the man would get hit by a car. Nancy quickly adds that it wasn't their fault, as the man would have hurt her otherwise. The 4 of them then settle down on the ground and have a conversation. After a while, Nancy tells Sarah about Manon, a powerful entity believed to be the embodiment of nature, who is also the patron of witchcraft. Bonnie asks if this is the first time that strange incidents like today have happened with Sarah. After thinking for a while, Sarah replies that she always had this unusual gift of making her thoughts come true. However, whenever she used her gift, something bad would end up happening. At this moment, it is obvious that Sarah is a witch just like the other 3 girls. Following this, Nancy reveals that upon invoking Manon, they can get powers which can make everything better in their lives. Slightly freaked out, Sarah says nothing makes everything better and leaves. She then meets Chris the same night near an abandoned warehouse. There, they share a kiss and he invites her to his house, but she refuses and heads home. The next day at school, the girls inform Sarah that Chris has been spreading rumors that he slept with her and that she was terrible in bed. Enraged, Sarah confronts him in front of his friends. To her surprise, Chris continues the false act and says he doesn't want to go out with her again, even calling her pathetic. His friends also mock her, prompting her to run away from there. Elsewhere in the school, Rochelle is at swimming practice with other girls. She's about to dive when a student named Laura shouts to distract her. This causes her to fall flat on the water's surface. Later, while changing, Rochelle asks her why she's doing this. To her surprise, Laura says she doesn't like black people and walks off. In the meantime, Bonnie visits a local hospital with her mother. She intends to get a new treatment procedure for all the burn scars on her back. Although the doctor doesn't guarantee that the procedure will fully heal her, Bonnie decides to go ahead with it. That night, Nancy walks to her trailer park home where her mother and stepfather argue about the power outage. She is miserable with the lack of money in her family, but cannot do anything to better the situation. The next day, Sarah, Nancy, Bonnie, and Rochelle go to the woods nearby and cast a spell. They each prick their fingers into a cup and drink the concoction of wine and blood. Afterwards, Rochelle wishes for revenge on Laura, while Sarah wishes that Chris would fall in love with her. On the other hand, Bonnie wishes that she would become attractive, and Nancy wishes for the power to change her economic status. Suddenly, multiple butterflies appear where the girls are sitting, showing that their patron Manon is listening to them. Later at school, each of their spells takes effect one by one. All of a sudden, Chris becomes enamored with Sarah and confesses his love for her. At lunchtime, Sarah steals a strand of hair from Laura and secretly casts another spell. That night, Rochelle notices a picture of a woman on Sarah's desk and asks who she is. Sarah replies that it's her mother in the photo. It is then revealed that Sarah struggled with depression, serious enough to drive her to attempt suicide. Her depression was caused because she blamed herself for her mother's death during childbirth. On the other hand, Bonnie begs Manon to take her scars away. The next day at swimming practice, Laura takes off her cap and notices that all of her hair is falling out. Bolstered by this, Rochelle dives off the board perfectly, impressing her instructor. Meanwhile, Bonnie is at the hospital with her mother for follow-up. The doctor checks her scars, and everyone is shocked to find that they have completely healed. Later, she shows up to class extremely confident while everyone checks her out. That night at Nancy's home, her stepfather argues with her mother and is about to hurt her when Nancy screams at him. This causes the stove to catch fire, and almost immediately, her stepfather collapses due to a heart attack. He soon passes away on the way to the hospital. The very next day, a lawyer visits Nancy and her mother and tells them that he has a life insurance policy. Because of this, they will receive $175,000, which they use to move out of the trailer park and get a new apartment. A few days later, Sarah, Bonnie, and Rochelle visit Nancy's new apartment. There, they cast a glamour, a spell with the ability to change the appearance of oneself and others. A few weeks pass, and the girls go to the beach, where they stand in a circle and attempt to cast a spell to invoke the spirit of Manon. After a while, a huge storm gathers around them, and Nancy is struck by lightning, which knocks all four of them unconscious. They wake up in the morning to find Nancy walking on water. She tells the others she can feel Manon inside her body. Afterwards, while driving back home, Sarah starts to question what they're doing and thinks they're taking it too far. Nancy tells her to leave the group if she's unhappy, but Sarah doesn't want to do so. A few days later, Rochelle finds Laura crying in the shower, having lost most of her hair. She begins to feel bad for her and questions herself if she's crossed the line. That night, Chris calls Sarah and begs her to accompany him to dinner, and she reluctantly agrees. However, he later drives her to a secluded spot where the two have a conversation. It's obvious that Chris is under the effect of Sarah's spell, as he simply agrees to whatever she says without even thinking. He then tries to give her a back rub, but she tells him to stop. Sarah immediately gets out of the car, but he follows her and tries to force himself on her. Fortunately, she kicks him away and escapes through the woods to Rochelle's house. She then tells everyone about what happened. Following this, Nancy arrives at a party where Chris is with an intention of punishing him. She takes him upstairs to a bedroom and tries to seduce him, using a glamour spell to look like Sarah. Drunk and dazed, Chris kisses her and they start to get intimate. But after a while, he watches in shock as the girl he's making out with changes to Nancy. The latter accuses him of using women as objects and magically throws him out of the window. This unfortunately leads to his death. The next day, Sarah mourns Chris's death and attempts to cast a binding spell on Nancy to stop her from harming people or herself. She then has a nightmare about the other girls flying in her house and attacking her. In school, she hides in the toilets but is confronted by the others. They threaten her, and Nancy tells her to stop trying to cast binding spells on her. Desperate, Sarah rushes to the magic shop to ask Lirio for help. The shop owner takes her into the back room and claims that she has tremendous power. Now, Sarah must invoke the spirit of Manon to defeat the others. Just as they begin to invoke the spirit, there is an explosion near the shop's main entrance. It turns out to be a glamour spell, but it's enough to freak out Sarah. She panics and runs from the store while Lirio shouts for her to return. In the next scene, Sarah returns to her room and shouts for her dad and stepmother. Suddenly, she receives a call from Nancy, who tells her that her parents were on a flight to San Francisco. To Sarah's horror, she turns on the TV where the news shows that the plane that her parents were on has crashed with no survivors. Confused, Sarah steps outside, only to find out that she is surrounded by snakes, insects, and rats. She runs inside, but they are everywhere in the house too. With no other place to go, she hides in the bathroom when suddenly Nancy appears and all the creatures disappear. Downstairs, Nancy taunts her about Chris and her mom's deaths, and the girls begin casting a spell on her. Scared, she runs to her room crying for help and looks at her mother's picture. Gathering all her courage, Sarah then casts a glamour spell on Rochelle and Bonnie. This makes them look burned and bald, prompting them to flee the house. Following this, Sarah's mother's spirit tells her to reach inside herself. With time running out, Sarah musters up all her powers and invokes Manon. As a result, her wounds heal almost immediately. Soon afterwards, Nancy goes upstairs to search for Sarah with a knife in her hand. To her horror, Sarah appears from behind a mirror, completely unhurt. She then tells Nancy that she has abused Manon's power and will have to pay back threefold. The next second, Nancy's fingers turn into snakes and bugs appear all over her. This freaks her out, so she apologizes to Sarah, saying she will leave all her rage behind. Moved, Sarah stops her magic but begins casting a binding spell so that Nancy cannot hurt anyone else in the future. The latter tries to flee, but Sarah kicks her, causing her to smash into a mirror. She then completes the binding spell, stripping Nancy of her powers. Afterwards, it's revealed Sarah's dad and stepmother are still alive. The next day, Bonnie and Rochelle, finding their powers gone, visit Sarah to attempt reconciliation. But they find that she wants nothing to do with them. Before leaving, they scornfully mutter that Sarah must have lost her powers too. However, our heroine conjures a lightning storm and makes a tree branch nearly crush them. She ominously warns them to be careful or they'll end up like Nancy. The movie ends as we see Nancy being placed in an asylum. It appears that she has gone totally insane after losing her powers.